Lauren. President Biden facing plummeting polling numbers, meanwhile, because of what you mentioned, Lauren, the ships waiting, as well as a massive spike in inflation. In a new Washington Post ABC News poll, his job approval numbers reaching a new low. 53% of registered voters disapproving of the job as president. Only 41% approve. In a new report from CNN over the weekend, it highlighted the tension between President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, especially over her appointment as the border czar. She sees it as a no-win situation, she claims. Joining me right now is the Wall Street Journal's columnist, former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and Fox News contributor, Bill McGurn. Bill, it is great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being here. What are your thoughts on the plummeting numbers and now the infighting within this White House? The vice president was given probably, arguably, one of the most important jobs, the border, but she did nothing about it.
I'm kind of wondering who the 41% are that approve. I mean, the problem that Joe Biden faces sort of transcends the partisan line. I think the biggest problem that he has is he looks incompetent. We had this disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan where we left our own citizens behind. We have, as you point out, the border today. You know, your reports, it's just not going away. I think we know that it's a disaster because no one in the Biden administration wants to go near that border, including the border czar. You know, you have his domestic agenda stalled in a Democratic Congress. There's not many successes, and I think it's all now we have inflation, and it's all contributing to this idea that the president is just overwhelmed, that he can't do the job.
So where is this going then? I mean, look, you've got a situation where Americans are clearly hurting and they are rejecting these policies, Bill. Look what happened 2 weeks ago. They almost lost very, very blue New Jersey. They lost blue Virginia. Voters are clearly rejecting these policies, and yet instead of looking at it as a wake-up call and saying, let's slow up, let's not force these higher taxes and massive spending through, they're fully prepared to push it through, and they want to vote on this social spending package by Thanksgiving or year end.
Yeah, Maria, it goes to show you that experience, especially in Washington, doesn't make you smart. I mean, if Joe Biden were smart, I think what he'd do is pull a Bill Clinton after his wife's health care initiative failed. He'd go back to the center. He kind of worked with Republicans and so forth. But I think the problem with Joe Biden is that he came in thinking he's going to be another FDR, and he's looking like another Jimmy Carter before of it. He's just sticking to grandiose plans. I think part of it is kind of getting back at the Obama administration, that maybe he felt treated him, like the not quite bright younger brother or something. But he doesn't seem to have any second thoughts about this. His agenda is clearly too radical for the American people. And right now, the American people are really focused on bread and butter issues like inflation. That's something they know. They don't know what M2 is or easing or something. What they do know is when they go to the gas pump and they're paying more than $1 extra for each gallon, or they're going to pay more for natural gas to heat their homes, or they're paying more for a pound of bacon. People know that, and they see it. And for a long time, the Biden White House was telling people it really wasn't there or it would disappear. It doesn't look like it's disappearing.
Brian Brenbring, jump in. Brian.
Yeah, Bill, how much of this just comes down to the left actually doesn't care if Joe Biden gets reelected? They know if they get this package through now, this spending package, it will last for decades and decades, because it is that social spending, that welfare state agenda that never goes away. This is a one-shot deal for them, in my view. Popularity doesn't matter. It's just all about pushing it through now.
Yeah, I think that's always been their game plan. Look, they knew they have a tight majority that, come next year in the midterms, it might look very, very different up on Capitol Hill. So they want to ram it through. The other big difference is, in the so-called battle between progressives and moderates, a lot of the moderates are really not that moderate. They just live in swing districts that might go against them. And so they're the ones who are nervous about this. Most of the progressives, not all, but most of them, are in pretty safe seats. So as you point out, one where they're not going to lose their seats either way, so they can push for an agenda that is more out of tune with what the American people want.
Bill, let me turn to this call that Joe Biden is scheduled tonight to talk with Chinese President Xi Jinping in a virtual call. Xi is apparently wants to discuss seeking clarity on the Biden administration's policy toward Taiwan. This is based on reports that we have. The president is expected to raise his U.S. One China policy, that it has not changed. He's also expected to talk about his climate agenda. But I have been asking repeatedly since Inauguration Day why this president refuses to bring up COVID-19 and the origins of COVID-19 and China's cover-up, which we reported extensively throughout early 2020. What do you think? I mean,
well,
the White House is saying we're not expecting anything to come out of this call. Then why do it?
Yeah, well, look at what happened when Australia brought it up. They called for an independent investigation, and then all of a sudden China started, restricting their imports of wine and lobster and so forth, trying to punish Australia. Fortunately, it's not working out the way they hoped it. Look, I think right now we have so many areas where we have to worry about China: military, spying in the U.S., trade, violating practices and so forth. But I think right now the priority has to be to maintain Taiwan de facto, not de jure, de facto independence, that its ability to sustain itself and continue as a free society. If China is allowed to override that by bullying, the Pacific's going to be very, very changed. So I hope that the president gives some clarity on that we're not going to let Taiwan be bullied into subservience and for China to be just issuing its threats and violating Taiwanese airspace. We don't want a war with China, but China policy begins by supporting Taiwan, I believe, and other nations like Australia that have stood up to China. Fortunately, we do have a deal, with Australia and the submarines. That's a good start. But we need to support our allies in the region, against China. I personally believe that one of the best ways to do it is with that free trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would not have China in it, would be a good wedge for all the people that play by the rules. And that would be a good incentive for China, and it doesn't cost us anything to do it. I think Joe Biden's skeptical of the deal because of the objections of labor unions and so forth. But that would be a good diplomatic start.
All right, Bill, it's great to talk with you as always.